Welcome to Vacuum Wars, and to a special video where we're going to try to answer a question I get all the time. Which robot vacuum mop system is actually the best? There are about three main styles of robot vacuum mopping systems in use today: the single flat pad style, the dual spinning mop pad style, and the newer single roller style. They all have their pros and cons, and in this video I'll talk about what those are and why you might want one over another. And I'll also go over what our test data reveals about this subject. Links in the description to the Vacuum Wars Top 20 Robot Vacuum list, and let's get started. The single flat pad systems are the most affordable and widely available. In its simplest form, it's essentially just a microfiber pad attached to a plastic plate on the bottom of a robot vacuum. But flat pads don't necessarily mean you're missing out on modern features. For example, the Roborock S8 series or the Shark NeverTouch series use a flat plate-style pad, but they still have all the main things you would want, like auto lifting when they approach carpets so you don't get them wet. Another benefit of this type is that they tend to have less mechanical complexity on the robot, so there are fewer moving parts to break. One of the main problems with the single pad style is that the pads tend to get saturated very quickly. This means that these systems are mostly intended for dried-on stains. They can't process very much wet liquid without just spreading it around. On top of that, as the pad gets dirtier during the run, it's more likely to just smear that dirt around unless the robot returns to its dock frequently during a run to wash its mop, which some of them do. If you do get a flat pad robot with a multifunctional dock that can wash its pad, that dock often has to be a bit more complex than the others. Because the pad doesn't move, the dock itself typically needs moving parts to move a scrubbing mechanism back and forth to scrub the pad. That adds complexity to the base itself, which can make the dock a little more involved to maintain as well. This brings us to our next contestant, the dual spinning pad systems, which tend to have some of the widest range of features. You get electronic water control from a clean water tank, and you get mop pad lifting. Some models can swing one of the pads out to the side to scrub closer to edges or along baseboards, and because the pads are constantly rotating at high RPMs, you're getting better scrubbing action on stains. The way their docks work is also a plus. Since the pads themselves spin, the dock doesn't necessarily need a bunch of moving parts. Typically, there's a textured tray or ridged surface, and when the robot docks, it just spins its pads in place over those washboards while water sprays on them. The cons for the dual spinning systems are similar to the flat pad style. Dual spinning pads, like single pads, don't have a way to physically separate and store dirty water. If there's a big wet spill on the floor and you send a spinning pad robot directly at it, it's just going to soak up that liquid into the pads and then spread it around once they're saturated. So, like the single flat pad systems, these are also mostly meant for dried stains, not wet spills. The pads will also get dirty during the run, which means that you really want a robot that can automatically return to the base to periodically wash its pads mid-job. The good news is that when they do that, because of that scrubbing action with the spinning pads, the pads come out of those wash cycles fairly clean. The spinning pads also introduce a bit more complexity than the basic flat pad, but only on the robot itself, and it's still not as much as the roller system that we'll look at next. Moving on to the single roller style systems. One pro with these is that they're the only ones that can realistically deal with a moderate amount of liquid on the floor. The way it works is that the robot sprays fresh water onto its roller from a clean water tank, the roller scrubs the floor, and then a squeegee or scraper inside the robot squeezes the dirty water out of the roller and sends it to an onboard dirty water tank. This means that it's actually extracting dirty water from the floor rather than just distributing it. Another advantage of the roller style is that it keeps the mop surface fresher during the run. Because fresh water is constantly being applied and dirty water is constantly being squeezed out and collected, you don't get the same progressive pad getting dirtier behavior you see with flat and spinning pads. And this is probably its biggest pro in my opinion. Newer roller style robots typically have the same carpet avoidance features as other mop styles. They can lift up the roller when they sense carpet, and in some cases they even have shields that cover the roller when they're on carpet. Some can also extend the roller slightly toward the side for better edge cleaning as well. The downsides mostly come down to complexity and cost. Roller systems have dirty water tanks, multiple spray nozzles, and a mechanism for emptying that dirty water into the dock that others don't. They also use a lot more water than the other types, so you'll need to refill and empty the tanks on the base more often, generally speaking. They also tend to be more expensive than the others. You're paying for that extra plumbing and engineering. So taking all that together, I'd say that the roller mop systems probably offer the most advantages on paper. They can handle liquids, they keep the mop surface fresher, but they also have the biggest downsides in terms of complexity, size, and price. This leads to the question I really wanted to answer with this video, which is, are any of these systems actually better at doing their core job, which is removing tough stains? I've been hesitant to make a call on this until now because after testing well over 150 robot vacuum mops, I haven't seen a clear, consistent winner based solely on mopping style. The original version of the test that we do used two types of stains, grape juice and coffee, which was dried over 24 hours. We've recently upgraded that test to use just one type of stain, coffee, which I think is a better approach. The main reason is that I found that grape juice was a lot less consistent as a stain. Its behavior changes a bit with room temperature and other factors, so I wanted something more repeatable. For this video, I hand-selected several pairs of robots where I could control other variables such as water usage as much as possible. I also picked relatively recent examples from the same brand so that we could be sure that any differences we saw could be chalked up to their mop system type or some other factor. For example, I compared Dreamy's latest roller system, the Dreamy Aqua 10 roller, to the Dreamy L40S Ultra AE, which uses dual spinning mop pads and similar amounts of water. And in our new stain test, they scored essentially the same. These results, and really all the results, were similar to what I saw with the previous version of the stain test, which was that there was not a significant difference in mop stain removal ability based on what type of mop system it was using. Another example is that I compared the Muva Z60 roller, which uses a roller, to the Muva V50, which uses dual spinning pads and similar amounts of water. In that test, the roller did score a bit better, but practically speaking, they had basically the same stain removal score. I also compared the Ecovacs T50 Max Pro, which uses dual spinning pads, to Ecovacs' latest roller flagship, the X11 Omni. And in that matchup, the dual spinning pad system did much better at stain removal than the roller. If I take the top 5 scores from each system from the old stain test where I have more data, the roller style and the spinning style are pretty evenly matched at an average of 33 points to 32 points. The only obvious loser here is the flat pad style, which averages 27. I could go through many more examples, but the bottom line seems to be, at least with our tests, that the robots that do the best with stain removal are usually just very well-designed robots overall, regardless of whether they use rollers or spinning pads. I also don't think that downward pressure is the deciding factor. I've seen robots with supposedly high downward pressure scores that are just okay in our tests, and others with more modest claims that do extremely well. So if you're in the market for a robot vacuum and you're trying to figure out which mop style is the best, here's how I would think about it. Roller systems do offer some real advantages. They can keep the mop surface fresher during the run, and they can handle moderate liquid messes, but you pay for that in complexity and cost. Dual spinning pad systems are probably the best middle ground for most people. They're great for dried stains and everyday maintenance. They self-clean well at the dock and aren't that complex. Single flat pad systems are mostly about cost and simplicity, but their docks can be very complex and they don't wash the pad as well, and I think they're objectively the worst at stain removal. There are some other mopping systems out there like the track pad systems, which I didn't mention, which I think are pretty similar to the roller style. In any case, links in the description to our favorite robot vacuums at our top 20 list on our website, which we keep updated regularly. Be sure to subscribe to Vacuum Wars before you leave, and thanks for watching.